Before I begin my talk, I'll just like to talk briefly about myself and DEER. I'm with the Coastal Environmental Research Group, which is a newly reformed group. I've only been with DEER for 6 months, so I haven't done much with regards to what I was hired for. So because of that reason, the talk is supposed to be 20 minutes. In order to ensure that I talk for longer, I had to go back and start with defining what an estuary is to kill time. So please bear with me. An estuary can be defined as a partially enclosed permanent water body, either continuously or periodically open to the sea on decadal timescales, extending as far as the upper limits of tidal action or salinity penetration. There are 5 types of estuaries which are recognized in South Africa. We have permanently open estuaries, temporary open closed, estuarine bays, lakes, and river mouths. Estuaries are important for a number of reasons. They serve as necessary areas for a number of organisms. Fresh water flows to the marine environment. With this fresh water flows, we have nutrients and as well as sediment that flow into the ocean. Carbon sequestration. The vegetation that is in estuaries undergoes photosynthesis like all the other organisms, terrestrial plants and all of that. So what happens is they use carbon and give out oxygen. This carbon that they take in, they are able to keep it within them for long periods of time. Estuaries also have the ability to regulate floods. How do they do this? Around the estuary, you normally have your wetlands, and during floods, wetlands actually absorb some of that water and reduce the intensity of that flood. Storm protections, how is that done? During low flows, you have sand berms that form in the estuary. So when the level of the sea is high, it protects the communities that live along the estuary. It reduces the intensity of the storm. And I'm sure you have seen in places where people build close to the coast, close to the estuary, they normally have sacks with sand, which they use to protect themselves from the effects of that storm or flood. Estuary plants as food and fuel and building resources. There are people that use the plants that are in the estuaries to thatch their roofs. Well, there are also quite a number of key pressures that are associated with estuary. For example, you can see here, this is a picture of a bridge. A bridge modifies a flow. Water can no longer take the same course that it was supposed to take because of this concrete structure that is built there. And also construction of dams also reduces the amount available in the estuary. Here you have a case of pollution, effluents being discharged into the estuary. And you also have exploitation of living resources, habitat destruction. In this picture you can see a man with his axe chopping down mangroves. As I mentioned before, I've been with DEER for about 6 months, and during the period that I've been there, there have been cases in KZN of estuaries being polluted. Here you have a picture of the Ispingo estuary and the Koshane estuary. In both these estuaries, the main cause of the pollution was actually sewage. Sewage was not treated properly, and it landed up in the estuary. Now I'm just going to briefly talk about the research that has been done in South Africa with regards to estuaries. My data was extracted from the bibliography of South African estuaries. Like I mentioned in the beginning, there are 5 types of estuaries, and in South Africa, our estuaries are dominated by temporary open-closed estuaries. So according to Whitfield's publication, it shows that a lot of work has been done in estuaries, but it's mainly ecological and biological work. There has been physical and chemical work done, but it has been done on a small scale. And also, the NBA report also made suggestions that most of these estuaries require to be resampled because they discovered that some of the surveys that were actually done in the estuary were done over 10 years ago and some actually over 20 years ago. So these need to be resampled. Role of deer with regards to estuaries. Monitoring of estuaries has been identified as an ICM priority. In South Africa, we have a lot of organizations that are involved in research, such as your estuarine research, such as SAEON, CSIR, EMR, and Ezemvelo, for example. Now, what happens is that you find people do the work in the estuaries, and then they don't publish their results. So if the results are not published, no one can actually know that they did something in that estuary. Coastal environmental research was mandated to drive estuarine monitoring to prevent the duplication of work. What has been done to date by DEER? They developed an estuary monitoring register. What I'm presenting to you now is work that was done before I arrived. So the way the estuary monitoring register works is that it was sent to different organizations around the country, and people were asked to include in the register what work they have been doing, what kind of monitoring that they have been doing. And what this register showed is that very little work has been done on estuaries. Very few estuaries are being monitored in South Africa. And also what DEER has done, they have placed probes in different estuaries. So far, they've been placed in only 4 estuaries. One estuary in the Western Cape, which is the Ezemvelo. That was done because the person that placed the probe there lives close to the estuary, so it's easy for him to access the estuary, and also it's threatened by anoxia. Case Karma, there's an aquaculture facility in the area which discharges some of its effluents into the estuary, and I'm sure you have already heard about the Operation Bagisa. So this estuary is going to become quite important because of this Operation Bagisa. The Mzimvubu and Bulolo estuary, both of these estuaries were identified as being important because of the recent shark attacks. And also an estuarine vulnerability assessment was done by CSIR on behalf of DEER. They were checking how susceptible estuaries are to different things like flooding using physical parameters. Work that we still intend on doing, like I've been mentioning for the past couple of minutes, I'm still new, so the objectives of the department with regards to estuaries is not clearly defined, and at this stage we are still busy developing those. So once we have identified what our objectives are, then it will be much easier for us to drive estuarine monitoring. And when we do that, we're going to have to define the most sensible variables we have to monitor, and that will be based on the problems that are associated with the different estuaries. We also intend to develop a database where all estuarine projects will be registered to prevent the duplication of research. And also we want to increase the number of estuaries that we monitor to include some of the estuaries in the Northern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. And we also want to involve universities that are close to estuaries to assist with monitoring. So these probes that were put in the various estuaries only measure temperature and salinity. So there's still a need for us to develop that to actually include some biological stuff. Thank you.